is there are only two sexes. You know, an intersex individual isn't a third sex in the same way that a male or a female is, because again, males and females are defined sort of by the type of gamete that their reproductive systems are organized around to produce.
You claim to know something about this, but you don't even know the fact that people have ovotestes, meaning they're not testicles and they're not ovaries, they're a combination of the two. You tried to say that sex was determined by the gonads you have. You had this weird, ignorant assumption that everyone was born with either ovaries or testicles. Because you, I think, honestly, are a very ignorant person who does not comprehend what it is to be actually born both. You don't. You understand on a level of how most people who are ignorant of both sexes, people who are born both sexes, who are born intersex, can actually vary. Sometimes you guys bring up somebody who's born with like androgen insensitivity syndrome, or you'll use an example like Klinefelter syndrome and not understand completely what Klinefelter syndrome to even bring it up, you know, because you live in a simple mind where you think that it has to be that people are born male or female, because you're not comfortable with people outside of those categories. That's all it is. It's not about what really is, because you could easily look this up and find out that not everyone's born with ovaries or testicles. Some people are born with ovotestes. Some people are born with gonadal streaks. You know, some people are not born with ovaries, testicles, or any of the above, you know. So, you know, you coming up with this ignorant term definition of how someone is male or female was basically your way of saying, I don't know what I'm talking about. And I'm going to use this example to prove that people who are born both are either male or female, because I'm going to just ignore the people who don't fit into that category. And then the people who do, I'm going to ignore everything else that implies that they're intersex for the small basis that doesn't even determine who they are. Sex organs aren't the same. It's not the only determining factor. See, in science, they determine sex by your DNA. They determine everything by your DNA, honestly. When you think of taxonomy and classifications, it comes down to your genetics and your DNA. So you can't just say that someone's sex organs makes them male or female when you haven't even come across what their chromosomes are. And that's a major thing with this man. He didn't even pay attention to chromosomes, as if he didn't recognize they even existed. Like, a way to come across like you know anything when you don't even pay attention to what someone's sex chromosomes say. And sex chromosomes occur before you have sex organs. At conception, you have your chromosomes, you have your DNA. You do not have any of the sex organs you're thinking about. So you're basically saying that people can turn into male or female as they develop sex organs. Instead of the conservative idea of sex is you are conceived with your sex. You aren't going to become another sex over time. And that's what you're basically implying. Say someone is XX and XY. They wouldn't be chromosomally female or male. They would be intersex. But you're saying that if they developed ovaries, then they became female as they developed ovaries. So you're saying that some people who did not start out as female can become female over time. You know, that's how you know it's not congruent, obviously. If you paid attention to sex chromosomes and sex organs, that implies either male, female, or both. If they don't come in line together, if someone, say, for example, has gonadal streaks, but they have XY chromosome, then you can say there's a intersex quality to that individual because they don't have male sex organs, but they do have male sex chromosomes. Anyway, continue.
We could take a different species that maybe has hermaphrodites, like some snails, where individuals, or some frogs too, individuals truly do produce and have the reproductive anatomy for both producing eggs or sperm, they're still not an example of a third sex. They're an example of an individual who's both male and female.
Yeah, it seems like you really don't understand anything. You were thinking that they'd have to have testicles and ovaries. I guess maybe your understanding of and being intersex is so limited, you don't even know all the conditions. Like, for example, what about people with ovotestes? There are a lot of people with ovotestes, and it occurs in so many different types of people. So, I mean, like, the fact that you didn't even realize to account for people who were born with ovotestes throughout this argument shows that, you really don't have an argument, because you didn't even think of people who are born with ovotestes. There's way more people who are born with ovotestes than what you're thinking about people being able to impregnate themselves or whatever. It would make more sense this way because you're talking about reproduction, male and female, at the same time or whatever. But there's some people who also can also have ovotestes, which would be reproduction. Well, many of them can't reproduce, but their gonads are not quite testes and they're not ovaries. So you can't put them in either category. Continue, though.
Composed of both sexes in one individual. So that's really just what I mean when I say sex is binary. There's two components to biological sex. Whether an individual can be sort of undefined and sexless, I don't think there's a really clear example.
No, there isn't a binary. How can it be a binary if on your basis of what you're talking about, testicles and ovaries, there is not a binary between testicles and ovaries. You can have no ovaries or testes. You could have gonadal streaks. You could have ovotestes. None of those categories would fit testicles or ovaries. So stop thinking on a childish level of thinking, oh, it's only testicles, ovaries, or none. I mean, you just seem so childish at this point. Yet you're trying to act like you know something. Dude, you don't know shit.
Of that happening, but I think it might theoretically be possible. And then any sort of indication that some individuals might be able to produce both. Again, there's no real clear examples in the literature of individuals who've been able to produce both a sperm or ova or have had the reproductive organizational plan and set in place to do that. But even if an example could be brought up of this person producing both eggs and sperm, they still wouldn't be a third sex. There's an example of someone who's exhibiting both sexes in one person. So that's what we mean by sex is binary. There's only two. Intersexes is sort of this umbrella term we use for sort of general sex ambiguity at first glance. The doctor looks at, they say, ambiguous genitalia. They're considered to have an intersex condition. It's not meant to be considered a third sex in any meaningful way.
Yeah.
So you mean to tell me because doctors who mutilate children over and over again because they're uncomfortable with the sex that they're born, uncomfortable with the fact that they're not born male or female, or there's no other sex, then why do you guys continue to support people being mutilated for being born both sexes? If they're really just one sex, you don't need to do anything to them, do you? Why would you need to do anything to somebody who's already born one sex? Anyway, you don't need to change them, but you guys do, and you support that. And this is the thing about it. When you guys have that mentality where you think it's one sex or the other, it basically means you're comfortable with that. And your problem with transgender people is that you're not comfortable with them. So all this shit is about you being comfortable or not being comfortable. It's not about facts. My issue with the whole situation with transgender issues is you don't love you for you. If you're constantly getting surgery for your body and trying to change your body because you're not comfortable with it and your body makes you want to kill yourself, you have a warped mindset towards your biological sex and you don't love who you actually are so much that anything that reminds you of who you truly are is going to make you want to kill yourself. So from my perspective, I don't support that, but I also don't support people like you who try and act like, I don't want to acknowledge that these people exist, and let's pretend they don't exist so we can destroy these people and pretend they don't exist. Destroying their bodies, making them take hormones that they naturally don't produce. I mean, you guys believe in the same thing as transgenders believe. The only difference is you want it for a particular sex. That's the intersex that you don't want to admit even exists. Because if we do, then we see the type of people you are and the disgusting type of person you are that really loves to transition people's sex to seem as though they're male or female because you're not comfortable with them being just in between, like they were made to be. Continue.
And I think it's a shame, really, because we often see this thrown around in the service of trans ideology, and a lot of intersex people are kind of the opinion of just keep me out of this. I'm nothing to do with this. It's obviously often exploited as some sort of gambit in this.
No, the truth is, with transgender people, this is what I mean. You guys constantly think of transgender people because it's another thing that makes you uncomfortable. To me, I don't give a fuck about transgender people in the sense of do they make me uncomfortable or not. I don't really care, and my body isn't messed up because they're stupid enough to try and destroy their body because their mind is telling them they're not comfortable with their body because of whatever's going on with their head. I don't care about that. But what I do care about is the whole thing with intersex people is you guys do not like to acknowledge what's happening to intersex children. One, intersex children are the most likely to get terminated in vitro because the understanding is when people hear about their child that's gonna be intersex, people are very negative towards that because of people like you who don't really understand and they don't want to acknowledge they exist. So once someone understands that these people actually do exist, it's hard for parents to actually accept it because a lot of people, have a lot of connotations and think of it similarly, ignorantly to transgender people, which has nothing to do with the two, So, I mean, that's my issue. And then the second is, you guys constantly try to mutilate their bodies if they make it to be born. You always are trying to say, we're going to fix it, as if there's something wrong with intersex people. Maybe, just maybe, being born male is actually something abnormal. Most people aren't male. Most people are female. And the funny thing is, most people who are conceived are male. The thing is, many more males do not survive to childbirth because you are kind of genetically a little different than the rest of people. I mean, like you only have one X chromosome. There's a lot of different medical conditions that occur just because you only have one X chromosome. While people who are female or intersex are more likely to not suffer from those conditions because we have, 2 chromosomes that are X or more, which, can actually help you with certain conditions that are more male prone. Anyway, so I mean, like, are we supposed to say something's wrong with you and maybe you need to be altered? No, I don't believe that. I think males should be males. I think intersex people should be intersex people and females should be females. It's just that I think, honestly, the whole gender game in itself was made to benefit men. And men have always tried to make females and intersex people serve their benefit, And I kind of feel like, this is why there's such a negative connotation against intersex people because men have always tried to put intersex people into a certain box, just generally. But that's all I have to say. Continue.
But I often see think pieces thrown around of people claiming that intersex people are just as common as, say, meeting people with red hair and things like that. But I believe you've done a fair bit of work debunking those statistics, haven't you?
Yeah, that claim specifically that intersex is around 1.7 or 2%, just as common as red hair. If this is based on basically, Anne Fausto Sterling. She had this article with someone, their last name is Blacklist, and they basically, their definition was literally defining male and female based on, they even said like platonic ideals of male and female. They had like a range of, how long the penis can be, how long the clitoris can be before they have intersex conditions. But what that does is really...
For one, it's not specifically that someone with a micro penis or clitoromegaly means that they are intersex. I will give an example. Okay, how do I explain this? Because I don't want to... basically, what I want to say is some people have conditions, and their micro penis basically indicates they have that condition. That implies that they are intersex. Say, for example, someone is XX and XY, and they basically have a larger clitoris, maybe, and it maybe is like 1 inch or so, that would be an indication that they are intersex. When they do a karyotype test that shows that they're XX and XY, that would make them an intersex individual. You see what I mean? Now, there are plenty of females who have clitoris that's 1 inch, and in these situations, I just was talking about this to someone, and they were talking about testosterone therapy or something of that nature, and they had testosterone in their system, and therefore it made their clitorises bigger. Obviously that's not an intersex woman, but someone who has XX and XY, and their clitoris is naturally just 1 inch long, that is intersex for them. So that's what I'm just trying to say here is, yeah, you trying to make it so mendacious where you're trying to make up that, some people are saying someone has a larger clitoris or a larger penis, that means that a smaller penis, that means they're intersex. That's not what they're saying. They're saying other indicating factors like your chromosomes. For some reason, you did not want to address the chromosomes at all through this, because when you talk about that, it totally debunks what you're saying. And anytime someone doesn't want to bring up something, understand, is because they know they're wrong. They know they have no point. They're just trying to ignore it because it's making them uncomfortable. But yeah, continue.
Is you can have a male with a micropenis who's still 100% male. They just have a tiny penis, and by their definition, this would be an intersex condition, and someone who's like maybe not entirely male. So that's not the case. I mean, I feel bad for people who have this condition, but they're still 100% male. Your penis length doesn't define how male you are in any meaningful way. So when we actually go to like a clinical, and also the definition also includes people like with Klinefelter syndrome, who they're like XXY chromosomes.
And that's an important one. Klinefelter syndrome is actually one of the larger conditions. It's got 1 in 500 births are people with Klinefelter syndrome. The number has been cut down because of abortions and the connotation against people who are born both sexes. But yes, that's a common one. And the thing is, with this one, he got confused because he brought up XXY chromosomes, but then he goes and tries to say they're completely male. How can you be completely male when your sex chromosomes are XXY and a male is not XXY, a male is XY? You understand? Like I said, you guys are prone to specific diseases because you are XY. So someone who's XXY does not have the same issue, because they are XX like females are, like we are. So that's why, It's just like, what are you talking about here? Continue. I want to address one more part that he brings up here.
These people might have some like breast development that takes place, but they're still 100% male. They still have testes and a penis, and they can father children, and they're fertile as males.
One, they're not fertile as males most of the time, one. And two, did you pay attention to why they have breasts? Oh, yeah, you didn't pay attention to that, did you? Oh, you want to ignore the fact that in the case of Klinefelter syndrome, what has to happen? They have to have their breasts removed. They have to take testosterone for the rest of their lives because they can't produce enough testosterone as a man would. So I mean, like, you specifically tried to ignore all of that. And then on top of it, you tried to say that they can reproduce like males. That's not quite the case. That would have to be if they take testosterone like males. Basically, male people don't naturally have to take testosterone. Like, they don't have to take testosterone. They're naturally in the male range of their hormonal levels, basically. Someone with Klinefelter syndrome is not hormonally male. They're not chromosomally male. You just thought testes and a penis meant that they were male, but that's not the case. Their testicles don't even function without testosterone. They are infertile. So, I mean, like, you tried to make that up. And I think one part of this that's important to notice is that this mindset is the type of mindset that appreciates changing intersex bodies to look more male or look more female, as you basically tried to ignore all the factors of someone with Klinefelter syndrome without testosterone, without surgery, basically, to look more male. You had to try and take all that out to make them seem male. But did you understand that that was influenced by medical intervention, right? Because they have to take testosterone for the rest of their lives if they want to be hormonally in the same range as males. Just like someone who's a trans man, for example, if someone's born female, they're going to need to take testosterone for the rest of their lives if they want to continue to be perceived as male, to have a hormonal level similar to males, you know. Same thing with someone with Klinefelter syndrome. They have to take testosterone just the same. They have to get their breasts removed just like someone who's born female who's trying to live as a male. The only difference is these people were born with male-looking genitalia, while, you know, someone who is born female is not. But at the same time, they're chromosomally not male or female. They're in between. So this is just showing that these people are genetically both sexes. They express both sexual characteristics. And they are hormonally not male nor female. They're not in the male region or the female region of hormonal expression. So it's safe to say that these people are intersex. You're just stuck like you were last time as a childish way of viewing it, basically, of ovaries or testicles. And this is not even one condition. Like, this isn't all the conditions of intersex people. There are plenty of intersex people who are born with ovotestes and gonadal streaks. So, I mean, like, you trying to say that everyone's born with testicles or ovaries to try to say that everyone's male or female, that's not true. Continue.
They might exhibit some secondary sex characteristics like breast development that are more typical for females, but still 100% male.
Also, you can't be 100% male if you're genetically not 100% male. How can that be? That can't be. That's what I mean. You are thinking from a basis of, I think, two things. One or the other. Either you're just extremely ignorant, or you want to trick people and make people not recognize that there are actual intersex conditions that make people both sexes. Because it goes against somehow your argument that there's two sexes and only two sexes because you don't want, I don't know what you don't want. What does it matter, really? I don't get it. Like, is it just because you're uncomfortable with sex variation? Well, it's not going to change anything. To be completely honest with you, everyone's born with the sex they are born with, and they're going to be that no matter if you're uncomfortable with it or not. So it doesn't matter if you're upset that people are intersex or not. They're going to exist no matter what. You should just see, you're no different than someone who's transgender because they don't like their own sex. And you are the type of person who doesn't like intersex people's sex. You guys are no different. You guys seek to change someone's sex because you don't like their sex. You're one and the same. You just have different ideas on who should change their sex. You think intersex people should change their, not change their sex, but change what they look to be and try and make themselves and make their bodies look like a sex that makes you more comfortable. And the transgenders try to change their sex to a sex that makes them look like they feel more comfortable with what they look like. You guys are the same. So, I mean, considering you try to be or claim to be conservative, what you are is a whole fucking idiot, just like those transgenders. You guys both have issues mentally, in my opinion. Something's wrong with you if you have an issue with someone's sex. Because no one can change the sex they're born. So, I mean, like, any person who has an issue with someone's sex is mentally a little fucked up, in my opinion. Especially when it's not your sex. So you shouldn't give a fuck. Mind your own business on your own male sex. But yeah, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, everyone. Comment down below and have a great day. Bye.